Right, school exams, what the fuck are those about?
The sort of Twitter campaign, the no wrong way thing, that did annoy the life out of me, because
No wrong path.
Oh, was that what it? Whatever.
Was that it?
Yeah.
No wrong path. Right.
Yes, there is. It's the simple
I'm
answer to
sorry,
that, really.
but we ask children to do these things, and it requires an enormous amount of work and dedication by them. And then on the day that the results come out, we basically shit all over them and say, it doesn't matter if you do shit. It either does or it doesn't. If it doesn't, let's not do it. Let's find a better way that's less stressful.
And what I don't get is, it's almost this sort of thing like, I passed all, or my mate passed all exams, I failed all mine, but now I'm fucking loaded, and he's just some like idiot public servant, and I've got all the money now. Who's laughing now? Me! Ha 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 ha! No wrong path.
But this is the thing. What are we actually saying here? Now, exams are like IQ tests. Some people are good at them, some people aren't. It's not necessarily representative of your ability to understand a thing, learn a thing. And I don't know how. I mean,
That's why I think Boris Johnson is, to make this political. It's just to say that I think he strikes as a man that I don't actually think is that smart, but I think has that ability to memorise all these great, Shakespeare quotes or whatever else it's going to be. I think but in terms of how he's able to process information and what things actually mean.
Yeah, I think Boris is actually. We should stop calling him Boris. There should be a campaign to stop calling him Boris, because that's not actually his first name.
It's not?
No, it's not actually his first name. He just uses that because it gives him that kind of bumble cunt sort of
wait, that's not his name.
No, it's one of his names. He's got about 15.
Oh,
it's
right,
one
okay.
of his names, but it's not his first name.
So not even his name is real.
Not even his. It's all bullshit. But he is canny, but he's a classic. To me, he's a classic kind of psychopath in that he has no fixed moral core. He's a total. I know I'm always complaining about the shagging, but people who can't be faithful by the time they're his age, there's something wrong there.
Well, kind of the way I would say that the other way to look at that is people that can't be honest. I think is more the issue, because if you're done with your relationship, just say it and move on and shag someone else. But don't lie to the person. Is what I think.
But the problem is, it's an inability to resist the impulse. That's what psychopaths have. Yes, poor impulse control. And Shagger Johnson has really poor impulse control, and that's what always nobbles him. That's why I don't think he will actually be PM, because he can't actually quietly do the work.
Do you think he is actually smart, or do you think he is just? A lot of these kind of Etonian.
I think he's canny.
Is that like a lot of the problem with these Etonians, that they're sort of heralded as these great, brain boxes? They've gone to Cambridge and all this. I think these are some of the worst advertisements for these universities you could imagine. I'd be deeply embarrassed if I went to the same university as David Cameron. I'd be like, oh my god, look what that place fucking produced. And I'm not sure these folk are actually all that clever. It'd be more able to remember things, regurgitate information, whether or not they've understood what they've read. In the same way that an actor, Anthony Hopkins, by his own admission, was a bit thick in school. He said he actually believed he probably was dyslexic, and he never considered himself to be terribly intelligent. But you wouldn't know that from his portrayal of Hannibal Lecter, would you?
No.
You would think this guy is super fucking smart, but he's just saying words. And he knows how to put emphasis on the right words to give a certain impression. That's what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's not understood what this great painting that the character of Hannibal is talking about, but he's able to make you believe he does. And that's what I see a lot of these kind of sociopaths that are in power, that they're able to give the impression that they have this great knowledge that doesn't actually exist. There was someone that I knew that had done a master's degree in, I think it was psychology, and they were describing, it was the idea about implanting false memories and how that worked. Now, I cannot recall the name of the experiment, but it was along the lines of these two parents took part in an experiment with their son, and the parents were in their mid-50s, whatever else. He was probably about my age. And they had a photograph in their living room of him, and it was photoshopped of him with them when he was younger in a hot air balloon. And this never happened, but the idea was, if we show him this photograph, will he create a memory? And that was the experiment, was to say that, because that's what we do apparently, that if you're given a small bit of evidence of something, you will actually fill in the blanks and create an entire story that never actually occurred. And the idea was the parents were not to elaborate on this photograph, they were simply to ask him, do you remember this? And then it just all came out. the way that this girl explained this to me was not that example. I knew that's what she was trying to get at, but she said, well, it'd be like if I said to you that David Blaine drowned in 2001, and then you told someone else David Blaine drowned. That's implanting a false memory. And I went, that's not...
No, it isn't.
That's just lying to people, which is a bit of a window into her psychology. But that was actually more like a veer.
Makes for a great conspiracy theory. Who's been David Blaine since?
So she landed somewhere between like what that memory thing was and the butterfly effect, and just got it all wrong. But she went to uni and studied all this, and then she got really annoyed at me because I said to her very politely, "I'm not sure that's right." And then she said to me that I have a master's degree and I will not be talked to like this. And stop talking to me. And it just as an example of like when you meet people, it's like that happens a lot.
This is the special source of James O'Brien's interview technique for people, is when people phone up and say something and he goes, what do you mean by that? And they have no idea what they mean by that because they've just memorised it wrote from the sun and they're just passing off these opinions as their own.
See, the advantage I have of being enormously unqualified is that I can just go, I don't know what I'm talking about. Whereas I suppose if you do have a master's degree in psychology and I go, what do you mean by that? There must be a pressure to actually know what you're talking about because you've got a qualification in it. Whereas I have the luxury of going like, I'm qualified in fucking nothing. But yeah, the school exam system I think is nonsensical.
What's the alternative then?
Coursework should be a part, and that's been a good thing, that kids who can't do that sort of performance thing of an exam get to, some of their grades should be constructed of things that they've had longer to work on. But ultimately the only actual test of knowledge and understanding is for a person to be without any assistance, without any resources, to be asked questions and be able to answer them. Mm-hmm. And what format you put that in, whether or not that's verbal or written or whatever, that's up. You can do that in all sorts of ways. So maybe we should be looking at, instead of having written exams, maybe we should be looking at an interview system where children are taught, but that requires enormous amounts more of resources.
Okay, a good example of this exactly would be the history exam. If I remember, I had to do a history dissertation and I had to basically memorise it and then write it in the exam room, is what I can recall of this. There was something you had to do a demo version for your teacher to assess. They would mark it, advise you, and then on the day you had to go in and do it. Now, I did really well on that because I recorded myself reading the thing out and I learnt it like you would learn lines for a play, and I just memorised it that way.
I hate people like you.
But I sucked at everything else in school, but I could do that really well. But to come back to the point about memorising regurgitation, I could have written anything, is the point. So, like, I had to write it originally and do the research and then have the teacher.
But you did have to write it in the first place.
In the first place, I suppose, but it still does come back to the point that because my brain worked in that way, I had an advantage over everybody else. So is that a fair reflection on my understanding of what I've written, or is it just the fact that I could memorise that better than they could? And I don't think that's right or fair. That's how we assess those type of things. That seems mad to me that you'd do something like that.
But, I mean, ultimately, the alternatives require a great deal more resources.
The system of education that we've got now, which we kind of take for granted as being the thing that is just the way it is, where everyone sits in a row. You know, you've got a teacher up the front who's got a blackboard and they're writing stuff up and you learn it. And then you do exams and everyone is the same age and everyone is supposed to follow at the same pace. All that kind of stuff apparently started from in Prussia in the late 1800s. They kind of made this system work. And the idea behind it was to create pliable, compliant soldiers, basically. People who could be, could go into the civil service and go into the army and fight. And could fight as a unit together at the same age.
So it was designed to create uniformity.
Yeah, uniformity was the thing.
When you were in school, did you ever have that thing where you would get annoyed because you had to wait for everybody else to catch up?
Yes.
I mean, I think we've all had that. I remember being in primary 2 and finishing something faster than everybody else, and then had to go. I've been told. That was the first time I was told that, and we got to wait for everyone else now.
It was more in primary school. That happened to me a lot, and as a result of it, I got a lot of kickings.
But you are quite into. You obviously have a brain that can absorb information pretty quick. That's quite evident just talking to you that you seem to be quite kind of switched on.
Yeah, I'm a
It's a bit Sherlocky at times. You seem to have this kind of brain that's able to sort of do that and come up with stuff pretty fast.
I hope this is not offensive to people who are diagnosed with Asperger's. I think I have Asperger's syndrome my son has Asperger's, and I'm absolutely convinced my father had Asperger's. And it presents a little bit differently in women, but I think I have Asperger's. I have the ability, when I need to concentrate on something, to work for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And yeah, hours will go by, and I have the ability to retrieve information about things. And if I'm interested in something, I will read everything I can, and I will listen to everything I can on it. And then when it comes up in conversation with someone else, unfortunately, I'll tend to just empty my head out back again. But so
it's not a bad thing, by the way.
Well, it's a gift. I wouldn't want to be any different. It can be a bit awkward at parties. I mean, Asperger's is also, it's about kind of having a sort of context blindness or a social cues blindness. That's what people don't realise. You know, they said, oh, people with, people on the autistic spectrum don't have any empathy. That's not true, but they'll often miss the social cues that let them know that something's going on. So, I mean, the classic example, my husband laughs his ass about this. My husband grows a beard, and then randomly he'll get bored and shave it off, and I'll come home and not notice he's shaved his beard off. And I'm like, well, we've discussed this, and he'll have bets with the kids on how long it'll take him to go, oh, you've shaved your beard off, or things like that. And it's because, well, I have two pictures of you in my head. Sometimes you have a beard, sometimes you don't have a beard. And so as long as if I came home and you dyed your beard purple, then I'd notice that, because I'd go, you're not, oh, right, no, okay, it's the beard. Because my thought process is different to other people's.
Everyone has different learning types. And I think, unfortunately, there's less money going into education, so there's less likelihood of these being diagnosed. Yeah. Like, just one example was, I was quite good at maths at school, but my younger brother really struggled the whole time he was there. He even got like a tutor. It wasn't until he took some test as a student teacher or something that he realised he had like a dyslexia for numbers. He was like 22 years old before someone had actually diagnosed that. You know, that should be all addressed if someone really, at a young age, and that helps them throughout their life. But
I mean, the thing is, when I was at school, nobody, before the film Rain Man had even came out, nobody for the most part knew about these kind of diagnoses.
Even when I was at school, there was at least 2 kids, possibly 3 or 4, that I was looking around going, something, not wrong, because that's completely the wrong way to look at things, but they needed help because they were clearly socially different to the rest of us.
Yeah.
But again, you're thinking, that was in 2005 I left school, and even then nobody was even addressing it. The teachers weren't even making the slightest bit of effort to differentiate their teaching style or assist these kids in any other way. And with only a few years of leaving school, because as soon as you get out in the world, you encounter people that have different ways of thinking and so forth, and instantly you're going, oh, that's what that was. Wow, he was probably on the autistic spectrum.
Do you know what the problem is now? Is these things they're more well known and they are trying to be addressed, but what's happening is it's been dumped on these teachers who are already having increasing workloads in bigger classrooms. So really, you actually need a class of people needs a teacher and not an assistant.
You'd have a person in the classroom who was not education focused. They were emotionally focused. They're picking up on these types of things. That's their sole role. To flag this type of thing up, because some people also are more sensitive to it than others. Not everyone can kind of spot, oh, that kid's got autism. It's not apparently obvious sometimes,
Yeah, I mean, I only realised myself when so my son was 13 by the time he got diagnosed, and it was a friend of mine who's a nurse at 11 pointed it out to me. And up until that point, I mean, I kind of knew vaguely what autism was, and it was people who don't speak and don't make eye contact kind of thing. And I didn't really know anything about it. And me being me, I did what I do. I went
extensively researched it, yeah.
And I remember going, all right, okay, yeah, that's my boy. And my dad. And his dad. And I read through this and I thought, and that's kind of me as well, isn't it? And as you begin to think, there's this thing. I've always known that I found certain things awkward.
A lot of school passes all this great knowledge to you, allegedly. It doesn't often give you the actual tools you need to survive, and all this stuff that you had to residually learn would have been something that probably by about the age of 11 or 12 should obviously have been, at least mentioned
We
at
need
some
to
point
give
in social
confidence.
education.
I think there's a problem though that it is a one size fits all thing, the education system, and I can't see any way of not making it like that. I don't know if you've heard of autonomous education.
There's homeschooling and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've experienced
Does this
private
kids
school.
sitting in trees and not going to lessons? Because if it is, I'm telling you, I'm not in favour.
Or it ends like Bates Motel.
Fuck 'em, we had to do it.
I've experienced state schooling, private schooling, and I know a lot of people who do homeschool, and I know people who have sent their kids to schools like you're talking about, where you kill squirrels and stuff. And I think there's a balance, like try to find what suits a particular person and their way of learning. It's very hard, and I think there are people who would be better off if they never went to school. I think it's more feasible to do that now than it ever has been in the past. We probably should be putting more kind of effort into thinking, well, is like school and the whole format of that, is that suitable for these people? I mean, how many people can you remember at school who were miserable and found that a completely miserable experience?
To tie this back to the no wrong path hashtag, the ridiculousness of it is we're saying there's no wrong path, but actually, but we're saying you all have to be on the one path up until a certain point. So after you're free from the school, there's no wrong path. But up until that point, you must go through the fucking sausage factory torture system and do these exams. It's mental, because they're all saying that the stuff is all meaningless once you get out. So why do we do it in the first place?
You need to decide, are exams worth it? Is that what we need to do, or actually are they useless and something else should be done? But there's this mixed message at the kind of end of that road. I'm of the opinion I don't want the young people to be that intelligent, because I don't want them to put me out of a job, so they can all fail and go down the wrong path if they want.
Listen, they're going to be working to pay your pension when you're
I'm not having
older.
a pension. I've got my own pension, and it involves checking out.